That's right. We're talking code of conduct for the churches, regulating the churches, with Archbishop Jackson Olisapete right next to him, Reverend Dr. Nelson Makanda right next to him, Father Joseph Mutie, and the lady in the house. That's right, the legal mind, Bernice Gashego. Thanks so much for staying on, folks. We really appreciate this conversation. It's very important. Archbishop, let me ask you this. It's incumbent upon the church to turn things around, right? I mean, there's been so much that has gone wrong. And it's time to turn things around, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, and I think it is no longer enough just to preach on Sunday and let the congregation turn up the next Sunday. The church must be engaging on everyday life. And we are imagining the Anglican Church to create a scenario in whereby the church becomes the center of transformation, where we invite people, not just on Sunday, but during the week. Different groups come for different functions, but all aimed as empowering, so that we are engaging the youth, in their IT, and how to access information. We are engaging the Mothers Union, and they can be able to be engaged in, savings and credit schemes that can help boost their economic empowerment. We are engaging the men, and heavily now we are engaging them in tree planting and, food security. And in that, if you put that as part of the mission agenda of the church, then you reduce desperation. You reduce levels of, loss of dignity because of poverty and ill health. And that's why the church must be heavily involved in education, so that we educate the mind. And as this great philosopher, Aristotle, said, educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. So we must engage matters of the mind alongside matters of the heart. Yeah. If the church does that, then we will reduce some of the things that we are seeing today, because why we are where we are at is because we are dealing with a highly disempowered people. Because of poverty, they are looking for solutions everywhere. And that's why they can land in wrong hands of people who purport to give them solutions where they don't have any.
And speaking of landing in wrong hands, Father Joseph Mutie, I have to refer back to Shakahola. This is what happens when a society is so desperate, so vulnerable, so gullible.
Very true. Jeff, we are living in a very volatile moment, allow me to say that, when there's poverty, there's unemployment, there's, challenges of mental health, every other, kind of crisis. The families are facing all this. And every other person is looking for a solution. Some are looking for quick fix, and if I tell you that I'm going to pray for you, I'm going to do a miracle on you, I'm going to do this, you are easily swayed. My freedom is stolen from me because I'm poor. I have nothing to lose. If I join into this and I am promised that I'm going to succeed, in a twinkle of an eye, then it is easy for me to just move on and accept it. But again, there's need for us to understand our scriptures. My people perish for lack of knowledge. It's important that we get to, just as the Archbishop said, people need to look deeper into the scriptures, not to speak to the mind, but also to the heart. People need to engage, even physically. It's a moment that we need to reflect, look at ourselves from, a retrospective manner, get to see where we are coming from. And you see, like, for example, in the early days, just as the Archbishop said, the solution was in the church. Every other good thing came from the church. The schooling came from the church. Matters agriculture came from the church. Anything that, brought the community together, came from the church. And the centrality of the church was very crucial in those early days. It's a moment now we get back to reflect. What is happening? Why is it now becoming like a place of death instead of getting the church to be the place to live your life and live it in abundance?
Yeah. Good point, good point. Reverend Dr. Nelson Makanda, let me ask you this. What's to stop politicians? And you know, the church and state. Politicians come to church and they insist on taking over the podium. They insist on speaking to so-called their people. Is it in the code of conduct where politicians should not be given that time?
Jeff, allow me to say that we are in this society, and politicians are part of us. They are Christians like we are, or they are religious like we are. So when they come and visit with us, we give honor and respect where honor and respect is due. And this is not to tell pastors or churches to decline to honor their leaders. But however, we have provided in section 28 of the small book, the Code of Conduct, section 28, it talks about politicians and the pulpit. And it says, the church shall safeguard altars and pulpits from being used by politicians for political causes. So anybody who signs on to this document, this is part of the package. We have anticipated this, and so we are speaking to it. So this document is actually very comprehensive. If you look at the Code of Conduct, Mwongozo doesn't have a clause like this. Yes. So we have thought about issues that are affecting us as a church, and we have made a provision.
By the way, could you read 29 as well? I like 29.
You like 29?
I like 29 a lot.
You like 29? 29 says, contributions given in the church forums shall remain private and shall not be used as a campaign tool or a ticket to access the pulpit for political messaging. So we have anticipated what happens amongst us and how to deal with it. So anybody who signs on to this is making a commitment to these things. And so it's easy for me, as a General Secretary of the Evangelical Alliance, to call that pastor and say, by the way, you forgot that there was a clause.
And you signed.
That binds you.
Yes.
And you signed onto it. Then they will either apologize, they will say, oh, sorry about it, we were overtaken by the crowds and things like that. But then it also calls on us to do public civic education for our clergy, so that then we train them in confidence. Sometimes it's lack of confidence that allows us to be able to expose our pulpits to people who ought not to be on the pulpit. But if we raise the capacity of the pastors and the ministers, that they are confident enough to be able to say, by the way, you have visited with us, and I'm standing here, you are only greeting the congregation. The politicians are very obedient. They do not want to get into bad books with the religious leaders because they know tomorrow they will be coming to ask for votes. So I think it's also on us to do civic education with this booklet and the requirements that are in here with our leaders so that they know the content and they are able to practice.
Okay, real quick. If they keep saying, I'm sorry, right? They're wrong. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And you keep forgiving them. Come on, I can say sorry all day.
It means you're obstinate. It means you're obstinate. And they have been invited. I mean, part of the fruit of the Spirit is it's obedience.
Oh, come on. Archbishop, please help me here.
I think...
You people are too nice.
Yeah, in my view, this document has given us an opportunity to appeal to their conscience. My conscience.
What if people don't have a conscience?
Yes, because I think where we have reached, Jeff, is that we are slowly losing our conscience.
Yes.
So that I have killed my guilty conscience. But now when I have a call like this, and it points to me that this is wrong, and I go against it, and I'm reminded, my guilty conscience rises in me, and I say, I'm on the wrong. And what the Bible teaches us, when you're on the wrong, repent. And therefore, what I see, the benefit of this is, it is now we have raised something that will make us conscious of ourselves, of how we need to conduct ourselves. And when I'm conscious of what everybody is expecting of me, and I know if I go to the contrary, then I'm judged to have done something wrong. Then that guilty conscience arises in me. And I think without anything that, judges me, Like, you know, when the Bible teaches us this is wrong, they're wrong, then judges me. Before anybody even point out, I know I've done wrong. And when I become remorseful, then I turn to God for repentance. And repentance means I will not repeat again. And that's what we are telling religious leaders. Now, we are appealing to your conscience. We have a document that can help you and guide you. So don't go against your conscience, because it will make you guilty. And when you are guilty of it, then you'll not perform. So I think that's how I want to look at it.
You're very kind, I guess.
In addition, there is a disciplinary action section. And, you know, it says it includes but not limited to reprimand, restitution, suspension for a limited period, removal from church leadership, expulsion from the fellowship of the umbrella bodies.
By whom?
By the umbrella body, because the code is recommending that every church, and again we're talking about the independent charismatic Pentecostal, because they're not members of umbrella bodies. So the reason the code is for umbrella bodies, it's encouraging churches to be members of umbrella bodies. In other words, the umbrella body is like a court of appeal. So even for me, if I am a pastor in a church and I'm dismissed, I can go to the umbrella body and say I was unfairly dismissed. So really, it's a win-win for members, for leaders, for congregants, because when we are members of umbrella bodies, we create a court of appeal, you know, for life. So, and it encourages a disciplinary mechanism. So anybody that's signing up to this code, you're required to establish in your organization a disciplinary mechanism and to be a member of an umbrella body where appeals can go. And as you know, even in court now, mediation and alternative dispute resolution, the courts are saying exhaust mediation before you come and clog the courts. Have you exhausted alternative dispute resolution? So it's enhancing that as well and recognizing that.
So they cannot be criminally prosecuted at this point, or?
They can. You still can go for criminal prosecution, but you're saying, you know, the Bible frowns on Christians taking one another to court. But this does not involve things like murder, which are criminal offenses. But where there's a disagreement between a brother and a brother leadership, then there is a disciplinary mechanism and the umbrella body is empowered. And because I subscribe to that umbrella body, they can summon me as an offender. And there's options as to what that umbrella body can do. And then if I'm dissatisfied, I can go to a court of law, but I can demonstrate that I have exhausted the disciplinary mechanism in my church and in the umbrella body.
Okay, so I have my own church and I buy airtime every Sunday.
All right.
Right? 2 hours of airtime.
Yes.
And people send in M-Pesa like crazy. They just fund this thing. It's like a cash cow. How do you regulate that? How do you, Reverend Doctor, you're laughing because, you know, we see this every Sunday and they get away with it.
You know, for the church and for Christians, we have been invited to give to God. And give
to Caesar what is Caesar's.
Yes, yes. So in view of that invitation, you'll assume that the giving is for worship and people are responding to a message or they are responding to God in gratitude, and that the attitude and the conscience of the minister is clear. But however, some of them, they tailor-make their messages that to the extent that the main objective of this message is to get that M-Pesa. I think we are appealing, and this document has spoken to this, that we will not exploit members for selfish reasons. That such monies, when they are given, they are not going to Nelson Makanda or to Jeff Koinange, but to the church kitty to do the work of God, to do charity, and to support that which is meant to do, but not to buy you a car,
a fleet of Range Rovers.
Yes, yes, yes.
A big mansion somewhere.
And we have spoken to that in this document. And so to the extent that the people who are being invited to give are not being exploited, I think we have no problem with that. But for those who seek to exploit, I think we have put in this document enough safeguards for us to be able to turn to this person, if you have signed to this document, and point out to you and tell this person, you are doing business with God's people. instead of empowering their spirits and helping them to grow spiritually and wholesomely, you are extracting the little that they have. And mark you, many of the people who become prey of this are the most needy. Look at the gambling that happens.
Yeah.
It's the most needy who are susceptible to this. So they give the very little that they have to you, you enrich yourself, and they continue to remain poor.
And even they castigate you for not buying them that Range Rover or that Prado or that VX or whatever it is. They castigate their audience.
Yes.
I mean, what kind of religion is that?
It is wrong. It is wrong. We are saying create a structure for financial accountability. And there's a whole section for financial accountability in this booklet. So that then in this structure, if you do not know how to budget, we have said we will teach you how to budget. And there's a whole section in this code of conduct and guideline, how to budget. Then how to account. In fact, we have said that at least every 6 months, you will give a financial report to your members. And so we will educate the members also to demand a financial report so that then it is open, it is clear that our resources, as we gave them, they went to serve a need that was worth our giving.
Archbishop, I see you nodding there. You're nodding.
Yes, I just want to say, you know, we are dealing with something that has captured not only the church but the whole society. Today in the news, you have seen that lady who was mobilizing young people to sell property in exchange of a job somewhere in Australia or somewhere.
Correct.
We have seen that whole story about, you know, the former governor of Uasin Gishu and the airlifting of students and how it ended. I think it is a whole aspect that when people know vulnerabilities of people and how, you know, they are desperate, and they are even encouraging them to sell land where somebody is sitting on because you promise something higher there, and then you mismanage their money. I think it's a societal problem, which even in the church has now crept in because people become, you know, an easy way of getting resources. We have seen I think 1 or 2 years ago, a pastor, I think in Kayole, who was demanding that his congregants will carry him on their shoulders to church until they buy him a car. You know, these are some of the shocking stories that you can see somebody, and people are willing to carry him. Yeah. And we saw people carrying him, and the media captured people carrying him. So this desperation that people are ready to do what somebody else has told them because there is a promise of something bigger, something higher, I think is a very, you know, the very thing that we need to deal with. And the way to deal with it is to address issues of poverty. How do we address issues of poverty? You know, loss of dignity, loss of self-esteem. We need to go back and say the church must devise a mechanism that we can address that. But going back to church history, we have always seen in every generation that there are people called heretics who rises up and misinterpret the Bible and the teachings of the Bible to benefit themselves or to just take people astray. And one of the things that, you know, like the mainland churches which have established codes that even when you are sworn in, you have one of the things as a leader of the Anglican Church I made to say that day when I was enthroned as Archbishop is to say I'll protect the church from heretics, from people who are coming to mislead it, yeah, internally and externally, whatever forces there are. And therefore, I think this code is just helping us to say these are the parameters, and this is how you can be able to see, as the Bible tells us, from the fruits of their, you know, what they produce is when you know what kind of a tree you are dealing with. So that when the church begin to identify, beginning to take things the wrong way, then they know they have a right to ask me why. And we are asking people to read this, and the churches that has not established their code, we have now an example, we have something they can rely on, and we can all be held accountable.
Okay, lady and gentlemen, I want to take a break and come back and ask, what happens from this point on? Does this head to Parliament? Does this head to a higher authority? Or is this it? I want to ask you, and also there's a lot of feedback coming in, a lot of people with experiences with the church, people carrying their pastors on their shoulders. Oh,
Not a donkey.
not a donkey. Keep tweeting at Koinange Jeff, at Citizen TV Kenya, the hashtag JKLIVE. JKLIVE takes a break. We'll be back with your feedback in a moment.